Over on Jaguar Gatorade, a new college football video is out. In this video, we talk about last Saturday's game between Vanderbilt and Hawaii, and how Vanderbilt's shockingly dominant win bodes well for them for the rest of the season, as it puts them in historically good company. Click the card in the upper right corner to watch. And now, on with our feature presentation. There have been 56 Super Bowls played in NFL history thus far. Ranking them all can be tough, and is no easy feat. However, if you ask people to name the very worst one of them all, odds are the game that would get the greatest number of votes and responses would be this game right here. There was absolutely nothing appealing whatsoever about Super Bowl XXIV. Just about everyone knew that this game was going to be a blowout, and the San Francisco 49ers were the clearly superior side over the Denver Broncos. However, I'm not sure anyone saw coming just how bad of a blowout this game would become. The Niners led it 27-3 at the half, won it 55-10, and won so convincingly that during the fourth quarter, the backups played the majority of the time for San Francisco. Do you realize how badly you have to be up in the Super Bowl to play the backups so as not to risk injury for next season? It was a demolition from start to finish. Denver never led or tied at any point outside of 0-0 at the start of the game. The Niners had 461 yards of total offense, compared to 167 for the Broncos. And the 49ers held onto the ball for just under 40 minutes. Unless you were a Niners fan, no one was having a good time watching this game. And especially since we were coming off of one of the best Super Bowls ever at the time in Super Bowl XXIII, this game was seen by many as a huge disappointment. But as bad of a train wreck as this game was on the field for the Broncos, off the field, it was also an absolute disaster. This is the owner of the Broncos at the time, Pat Bowlen, and by all accounts, he's one of the greatest owners in NFL history. He did a lot of great philanthropic work in the community during his time as the owner of the team, and was highly successful on the field, as the Broncos were consistently good under his regime. However, a few days before Super Bowl XXIV, he decided that it would be a good idea to make a joke about the game, and about one of the players on the 49ers. And it would be one thing if the joke just wasn't very funny or fell flat. That happens, as we all tell jokes that don't exactly land. Not everything can be a winner. But this joke was way worse than that. Because this joke, right on the eve of the Super Bowl, wound up insulting literally an entire community, and had people accuse the Broncos organization and Pat Bowlen of being racist. It was that bad. And even though all the evidence from his 75 years on Earth suggests otherwise, and that this wasn't an attempt to be racist, but rather just a horrible joke on his end, that didn't matter back in 1990, when the Broncos got another distraction before the game that they desperately did not need. Because this is the story behind the forgotten but horrible controversy before Super Bowl XXIV. Before I talk about the actual comment in question and where Bowlen went wrong, we need some context to understand the subject of the joke. Because entering the Super Bowl, the good news for the Broncos was that they had one of the best pass defenses in football. Heck, maybe they had the best pass defense in football, period. They allowed the fewest passing touchdowns of any team in the league, and the third fewest passing yards and yards per pass attempt as well. You had guys like cornerback Tyrone Braxton, who had 6 interceptions, safety Dennis Smith, who made the Pro Bowl, and rookie safety Steve Atwater, who would eventually go on to become one of the greatest safeties of all time and become a Hall of Famer. And these guys were helping cause trouble all season long, especially when it mattered most. In the AFC Championship against the Cleveland Browns, for instance, the secondary recorded 3 interceptions, and held Bernie Kosar, one of the best quarterbacks in the sport at the time, to a surprisingly low passer rating of 44.7. In their regular season finale against the San Diego Chargers, they forced Billy Joe Tolliver to throw no touchdowns and 4 interceptions, while posting a passer rating of 32, which is worse than if you did nothing but spike the ball into the ground on every single play. And those performances were not a fluke. They were the norm. Throwing on Denver's defense in 1989 was just asking for trouble. That's the good news for the Broncos entering this game. They had a pass defense that, on paper, was worthy of competing in the Super Bowl. The bad news was that they never faced a task as daunting as this man right here. This is San Francisco 49ers wide receiver Jerry Rice. You may have heard of him. There is endless discussion about who the greatest of all time at a certain position is. You will hear spirited debates for a bunch of names at running back and quarterback and defensive ends and whatnot. But with wide receiver, I think we all just collectively accepted the fact that it's Jerry Rice, and there's no point in even debating it. The only debate is for who's in second place. And in 1989, Rice was once again instrumental in helping the 49ers make it to the Super Bowl and have a chance to repeat as back-to-back champions. Because with apologies to Sterling Sharp, who was a worthy number 2, Rice was the clear-cut best receiver in the game in 1989. He finished the season with 82 catches, which ranked 5th in the NFL. He ended the year with 1,483 yards, which was the top total in football. And he finished the season with 17 receiving touchdowns, which was not only the top total in football, but was 30% higher than second place. Keep in mind that in 1989, only 3 players even had more than 10 receiving touchdowns. Chris Carter of the Philadelphia Eagles with 11, Sterling Sharp of the Green Bay Packers with 12, and then, way at the top, and towering above everyone else, Jerry Rice with 17. Rice was named the first team All-Pro by the Associated Press and a Pro Bowler for his efforts, and finished second in Offensive Player of the Year voting, only behind the man throwing most of those passes to him, Joe Montana. And during the postseason, he was showing absolutely no signs of slowing down entering the Super Bowl. Over the course of the 2 playoff games, with those being the 41-13 victory over the Minnesota Vikings and the 30-3 victory over the Los Angeles Rams, Rice had 12 receptions for 169 yards and 2 touchdowns. Not too shabby when the lights were on brightest. It was very clear to anyone with knowledge of football whatsoever that the only way, literally the only way that the Broncos had a chance at winning this one and pulling off the greatest upset in Super Bowl history in the post-merger era was to contain Jerry Rice. If they shut down Rice, then maybe they had a chance. If they couldn't shut down Rice and couldn't take down the top target in San Francisco's offense, then you might as well call the game, because there's no way you can win. Naturally, in the build-up to the game, Broncos owner Pat Bowlen, who was appearing in his 3rd Super Bowl as the team's owner and knew how these things worked, was asked about the San Francisco 49ers, how he rated them, and what the Broncos would have to do in order to win, in particular with Jerry Rice. Now you could go with the extremely cookie-cutter, extremely vanilla answer and say something along the lines of, Jerry Rice is an incredibly talented receiver, and he's probably the best in the game. We know what he can do. He's been doing it all season, and it's going to be a fun battle. However, I trust our players and I trust our coaching staff, and I know they're hard at work trying to figure out what they're going to do. It should be a great matchup, and I'm excited for it. Saying that would have been the incredibly safe and incredibly smart thing to do. However, if Bowlen did that, then there would be no video, and there would be no controversy. Because Bowlen decides a joke that he didn't know who Jerry Rice was. And the problem with this joke? It didn't just go beyond a simple who, or I don't know who that is. It was so bad that it was deemed by many as racist, culturally insensitive, and offensive. Yes, it was that bad. When Bowlen was asked about the 49ers, he had nothing but praise for the organization. As Bowlen said, those guys have got a great owner. They've got God for a quarterback. And if Bowlen just stopped there, he would have been totally fine. Alas, he did not do that, because he decided to keep going. Bowlen said, they've got a Chinaman who plays wide receiver whose feet never touch the ground. Now that seems like a bizarre comment at first, seeing as the 49ers do not have any Chinese receiver on their team. So one of the reporters followed up and asked Bowlen what he meant by that comment. And Bowlen decided to double down and explain his statement, saying, that Chinese guy, what's his name? Rice? Yep. Bowlen went there. Get it? Because his last name is Rice, and China is the world's largest producer of rice and is known for rice. But more so than the fact that this joke didn't land in the slightest bit, seeing as Bowlen had to explain the joke, is the fact that Bowlen said the word Chinaman to describe rice, as though he were Chinese. Because many people deem Chinaman to be an incredibly derogatory slur. I'm not going to dive too much into the history of that term and why that is the case. However, it deals a lot with the dehumanization of Chinese Americans. While the Central Pacific Railroad was being built and many Chinese died, the idiom "a Chinaman's chance in hell" was given popularity, basically saying that you have no chance at surviving or pulling this off. People also referred to Chinese Americans during the 18th and 19th century as Chinamen for their last names, as though they were not worthy enough to have their own identity, and as though they all looked the same. It's one of those terms that, on the surface, if you didn't know any better, doesn't seem like a derogatory term, since Englishmen and Frenchmen aren't derogatory at all. However, knowing the history of that term, it changes things drastically, and it is extremely offensive to Chinese people. So when Bowlen said this about Jerry Rice, saying that ethnic slur, while at the same time making a joke about China just because his last name was Rice, oh, the outrage from this was bad. And keep in mind that this is not one of those things where there was no outrage back then, even though there would have been a ton of outrage today on social media. It was really, really bad back in 1990, which is saying a lot. And it was especially bad because the team that Bowlen's Broncos were playing was the San Francisco 49ers. If the Broncos were playing the Green Bay Packers, since Green Bay does not have a huge Chinese American population, the backlash wouldn't be as bad. However, San Francisco has the largest percentage of Chinese Americans of any city in the United States, with over 10% of the residents in the Bay Area identifying as Chinese American. Literally, you could not have picked a worse possible opponent and city to make that joke toward. Broncos spokesman Jim Sacamano tried to do some damage control, saying on Bowlen that he was just speaking facetiously. He said he was simply making a play on words. He added that certainly at no point did he mean anything ethnic or racial. He was trying to be funny. And before I get into the reaction, really quickly, I'm inclined to believe this. Again, the term that Bowlen used isn't a term that you know without any prior knowledge is considered by many in that population to be derogatory. I could see at least what Bowlen was trying to do with the joke as a play on words, even if it was not funny. And this is literally the only noteworthy controversy involving race in Bowlen's entire 75 years on Earth. So all the evidence weighs in favor of this just being a man who is trying to lighten the mood and fail miserably at doing so, rather than a man who is truly racist or intentionally trying to be insensitive to cultures. Plus, Bowlen apologized afterwards and said that he was willing to discuss the issue with the Chinese American community representatives to better himself and learn more. So he took all the right steps in the aftermath. But did that stop the backlash? Absolutely not. Because you had tons of groups and individuals who were Chinese Americans who were furious at Bowlen's comments. As Henry Durr, the director of Chinese for Affirmative Action, said on Bowlen's comments, "It's just outrageous. If he's serious, it shows how racist he is. If he was joking, it shows how insensitive he is to make a joke at our expense. Either way, he's wrong. It's one thing to rile up a team to get ready for a game, but don't do it at our expense." Durr added on to that, saying, "It just shows you how stereotyped we are. No matter what our achievements are, a lot of people will still view us as a bunch of Chinamen." Yvonne Lee, the director of the Chinese American Citizens Alliance, a national civil rights group with over 7,000 members at the time, said, "It's really ironic. Just as we're getting ready to celebrate our 95th anniversary, we read about these racist comments coming from someone of that nature." And another group, the Chinese for Affirmative Action of San Francisco, also pressured Bowlen after these comments, and tried to get NFL Commissioner Paul Tagliabue to fine or punish Bowlen for the remarks, which never happened. In a statement put out by them after this press conference, they said, "In a country which is as ethnically diverse as the United States, the use of racial slurs is unacceptable and will not be tolerated. Furthermore, derogatory statements such as Mr. Bowlen's alienate the football viewing audience, which includes many Asians, and does not make good business sense." So yeah, there was a severe backlash from this, and just about everything that could have gone wrong for the Broncos at the Super Bowl, both before the game and during the game, did, because this truly felt like Murphy's Law in action. And for what it's worth, Rice finished that Super Bowl with 7 catches for 148 yards and 3 touchdowns. Look, I truly think that Pat Bowlen just made an honest mistake at trying to be funny and not realizing the insensitiveness of his comments that he made. I don't think he meant any ill will whatsoever by these comments. And again, this is just about the only blemish in this category on Bowlen's entire legacy. But it just goes to show you that you've always got to think before you speak, especially at the Super Bowl, when everything is magnified. Pat Bowlen did not do that. And because of that, not only did Jerry Rice make the Broncos look bad on the field, but he indirectly made them look bad off of it as well. Get your official Jaguar Gator 9 merchandise by going to jg9shop.com, and be sure to like this video, ring the notification bell, and subscribe down below if you haven't already, as it helps the channel out a lot. And be sure to check out Twitch every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern for your chance to play NFL trivia and win cash prizes. Link in the description below. If you want to see videos like this condensed down to 60 seconds, then follow me on TikTok at Jaguar Gator 9. To see college football videos, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 8. To see highlight videos of players throughout the history of the NFL, subscribe to JG9 Highlights. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping out the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. See how you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.